Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about that Big Navi rumor being BS. SK Hynix has come out and said as much. JPR report on GPU sales for AMD and NVIDIA. We'll be talking about Intel's commitment to doing full memory encryption at some point, probably eventually. Biostar resurrecting the Sandy Bridge era H61 chipset. AMD chiplet cost and the reduction of AMD's cost by moving away from monolithic dies. And then also the game Plague Inc. has been pulled from certain markets because of concerns over certain human malware. Before that, this video is brought to you by Corsair's Hydro X water cooling series. Corsair's strength is bringing water cooling to the masses, and it has built out cooling solutions with industry leaders to help newcomers get into open loop cooling. Corsair has fittings, adapters, GPU water blocks, CPU water blocks, pump res combos, and radiators, all available in the Hydro X line. As you can see in our footage, these kits can be used to build beautiful open loop systems. Learn more at the link in the description below. First item is an update on the donations, the charity donations we've done from the shirts, from the campaign we started around January 19th, going to the various wildlife charities we've chosen in Australia to help with the recovery. That would include the rehabilitation of animals affected by wildfires, relocation of them, treatment, so forth, going out and leaving out food and water for the ones who are recovering after their habitats were destroyed. So we have an update on that for you. I've just realized I should mention this case too. This is the Yeston Cute Pet case. We reviewed it, and you should check it on the channel. If it's not there now, it will be tomorrow. So check back quickly for that. But anyway, back to the charity stuff. So we chose two to work with. We chose Adelaide Koala and Wildlife Hospital, and then also we chose Wildlife Rescue South Coast. And both of those are based in Australia, and they've been around a long time. We did research on them, talked about why we chose them in our original video. So I won't go over that again, but the end of it was we did a $1,500 initial donation to kick things off. We committed 10% of the total GN store revenue from February 19th back to January 19th to the charities. And then we also did a Modmat auction, charity Modmat auction on eBay, which Linus ended up buying for about $3,050. So it was about $3,100 after shipping, which we also donated to the charities. And then there was also the first of 3 Kingpin PCBs that was autographed with the Modmat and X299 dartboard. That went up for $2,050 on eBay. So, and we've received that money. We've shipped it out to the person who bought it. It was not Linus this time, although he did put in a bid. I saw him for $1,000. He tried, but he got outbid this time. So yeah, it was a lot of stuff. Then we had the shirts. So these shirts I honestly grossly miscalculated it. I didn't think they would really sell that many because my concern was, given the way the real world news cycle works, everyone's talking about human malware now, and everyone stopped talking about the Australia wildfires, which have left devastation in their wake. It's not like they just went away because the news topics have changed. So I was worried we'd end up stuck with the shirts. But our community is amazing and wanted to support the cause and love the design, so everyone wins on that. We did 100% profit donation from these shirts to the charities. We're choosing Adelaide Koala and Wildlife Hospital for this one particularly. So 100% of the profit from this goes to them, and we reopened the orders after the first 200 sold out and sold a whole lot more. So the final donation in total, we've already given some of this money to them, but the final total donation is about roughly $18,935, which is staggering. I don't. The most we've done before that, when we did a similar, we did like a 10 trees per item ordered on the store deal back around Black Friday. I thought that was a lot of money. And that came out to something around $9,000 or so. So 18 grand, or actually almost 19 grand, is completely insane. That is more than I expected. Most of that comes from the shirts. You should have yours shipping out on March 6th if you bought one, maybe March 7th. So we had to get those obviously back ordered and then made more of them so that we ordered to the quantity this time. That way we wouldn't under order like we did last time. So thank you for supporting them. These are groups that I care a lot about, and I mean, it's you should be able to kind of figure out the types of groups I like to work with. We've done Cat Angels, which is a cat shelter. We've done Eden Reforestation Project, which is a obviously a reforestation group, and then we've worked with these wildlife charities. So things outside, that's what I like because I don't get to go there. But anyway, that's a lot of money for them. We've already given a good amount of that out. So we did the eBay auction from the first one, Linus's money has already gone out, and then the initial 1,500 went out. So now I need to finalize the math, but it's looking like about $14,300 or so. And then we'll put a screenshot on the screen here after we do the donation of the final receipts that are going to the charity, so you can see the total sum, and we'll get it all counted and just pop it up on the screen. So also, there were unknown viewer donations too. I got a lot of messages about viewers donating to various groups in Australia, helping with wildlife recovery, and we can't count those, but they were also significant. So that's the biggest drive we've ever done. Thank you for supporting it. It is frankly kind of amazing to see that level of support for a cause that we care about, and obviously a lot of you do as well. And I mean, even if you just get a really cool shirt out of all of this, then I mean, that's a pretty good deal for everyone. All right, next news item. So that Big Navi rumor is BS. Earlier this week, as the internet is wont to do, it was lit aflame with more rumors of what form Big Navi would take. This time, a Twitter user who has since deleted the associated account shared a screenshot of an alleged spec sheet from SK Hynix outlining specs for an unnamed AMD GPU. You can probably imagine what happened next. The story and the screenshot, of course, made the rounds online. We didn't cover this one because we knew, but made the rounds online. It was picked up by a number of outlets. The specs alleged the GPU would feature 5120 shaders across 80 CUs with as much as 24 gigabytes of HBM2E memory. Now, as a quick point, any one of these things could potentially be true or could potentially be realized, but all of them together, it's not happening in quite the way this was described. So the memory was claimed to operate over a 4096-bit memory bus with more than 2 terabytes per second bandwidth, and again, 24 gigabytes HBM2E, which is different from the HBM2 that's been out there before. Those specs double what the current RX 5000 series cards offer in terms of shaders and CUs, and while that in itself isn't necessarily unbelievable, especially if you start looking at Workstation or the Instinct line of cards, the fact that a mainstream gaming card would come equipped with a 24 gigabyte memory buffer is unbelievable. It's complete overkill for mainstream gaming right now, and AMD's margins on such a card would be completely lost trying to sell it to consumers. HBM2E is expensive to make, it's expensive to package, and while it might make sense for a workstation card, it doesn't make a lot of sense for a gaming card, especially considering the value of GDDR6 right now, especially as much as 24 gigabytes. So while it's possible that AMD could do 24 gigabytes on a card that's targeted at gaming, and it has done things like that in the past, it's not likely. And if AMD does actually do that, then it's going to be in a lot more trouble because it obviously hasn't gotten the memo that more memory isn't more better. So it looks like a lot of that's not going to turn out quite the way the rumor indicated, not to mention the specs for SK Hynix's HBM2E memory shown in the allegedly leaked screenshot aren't even accurate. This is a point that SK Hynix itself brought up with an official statement. The statement reads, quote, "Recently, there have been media reports about SK Hynix's memory HBM2E and AMD's next-generation GPU, based on the allegations by a Twitter user, CyberpunkCat, which are factually incorrect. SK Hynix hereby announces that the company has not created or distributed such specifications, as well as the document asserted to be leaked by an internal source. After thorough investigation, we conclude that the screen capture of the allegedly internal document is fabricated." SK Hynix continued and said, "First of all, the specifications of our HBM2E shown in the document are incorrect." And it continued to say that, secondly, for those of you who are not familiar with Korean, the text in the document says, quote, "with local communities, 2020 happiness," which is not related to the HBM2E development or GPU. Moreover, we found that this text actually appeared on the main page of our Korean newsroom as a title for one of our content pieces. So it looks like, in the very least, bits and pieces of this are inaccurate, if not the story in its entirety, but probably just best to wait and see for this one, as is often the case. JPR and their GPU report. So AMD is up 22.6%, NVIDIA is down about 1.9% in the GPU sales report by JPR. This is different from a market report different from a stock market report. It's a market share report, sort of. In the latest report from JPR, which should always be taken with a grain of salt, the firm states that quarterly GPU shipments from fourth quarter of 2019 increased by 3.9% over third quarter of 2019, and that's for GPUs as a whole. More specifically, AMD's GPU shipments last quarter were up by 22.6%. Alternatively, NVIDIA's Shipments were down by about 1.9%. Keep in mind also that JPR does some funny things with counting IGPs, APUs would be in that, as GPUs in some of its charts. So you always have to be careful what numbers you're looking at, because most of us in our audience wouldn't count an Intel CPU with an IGP in it as a GPU sale. But a lot of JPR's numbers do. Not all of them, but you just have to look closely at the charts. So the other thing to keep in mind is that, similar to Zen's launch, increasing by 22.6% against almost nothing previously isn't going to be enough to keep Radeon afloat alone. It'll need to continue to push for success, especially with its driver issues. So it can pay off some debts and hopefully improve development on the drivers with that number, but just remember that percentages are funny stat math when it comes to stuff like this. JPR notes that this is the third consecutive quarter of increasing GPU shipments. JPR also notes that a certain epidemic involving a certain pathogen in a certain country has disrupted supply chain operations for GPU makers, which has resulted in less growth. We can't be more specific because our overlords will remove ads, but human malware is a real plague on the industry. Coming as no surprise, NVIDIA still commands the lion's share of the market with 73% reported market share. AMD is at a very distant 19% in second, with Intel trailing AMD at 18%. Coming as no surprise, NVIDIA still commands the lion's share of the market with 63% market share. AMD is a very distant 19% at second, with Intel trailing AMD at 18%, and that's why the numbers are weird. Biostar resurrects Sandy Bridge era H61 chipsets for one of its new motherboards. Biostar has apparently decided to bring Intel's H61 platform back to life with a new motherboard based on the Sandy Bridge or 2011 era chipset, H61. This one specifically is known as H61 MHV2, and Intel has brought back some of its chipsets recently to try and keep older markets alive, as the non-14 nanometer process is more accessible to Intel these days. It seems that Biostar is trying to cater to users looking to keep older systems alive and forego updates, or forego the second-hand market, which is massively overpriced. The H61 MHV2 motherboard is a micro ATX board that has some oddities, but is otherwise standard. For one, it comes with an extra PCIe slot, making the board a bit longer than your usual micro ATX fare. The DIMM slots are also situated at the top, horizontal to the CPU socket, and the chipset sits at a 45-degree angle to the CPU socket. The board is also keeping with 2011 tradition, being devoid of any modern I/O, such as USB 3.0 or any of its confusing generational successors, and even PCIe Gen 3 isn't fully supported unless an Ivy Bridge chip is being used. Also, SATA 2 ports are on tap, a far cry from today's SATA 3 ports. Biostar has also more notably improved the NIC to a 1 gigabit per second option, up from 100 megabits per second previously. Biostar hasn't revealed the pricing at the time of writing or filming. However, if the price is right, it could be a nice option for anyone who's still trying to maintain Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge era machines if you just need a motherboard. AMD's chiplets reportedly reduced the cost by 25 to 50% on processors versus monolithic approaches. This is not surprising to anyone. NVIDIA has been looking into MCMs or multi-chip modules for years now as well, and Intel will probably eventually go the same direction. The multi-chip module approach, actually we know they're going the same direction, is cheaper because you can make multiple smaller pieces of silicon, and so your yields are going to be significantly better, and then you can just sort of bin them out depending on what products are in the most demand at any given time. With Zen and its accompanying chip families, Ryzen, Threadripper, and EPYC, AMD doubled down on MCM designs over single monolithic processor dies. This has given AMD a lot of flexibility up and down its product stack, as we've seen AMD continually up the core count in successive generations. AMD's chiplet design has also been more economical and predictable in manufacturing. Monolithic dies can be very expensive, especially as transistor density increases and chips get more complex. Bigger dies also constitute more manufacturing problems on a per wafer basis, increasing the chances of less than desirable yields. While any new process needs time obviously to mature, AMD has had its fair share of growing pains transitioning to TSMC's N7 node. Its aggressive pricing, though, has been boosted by lowering manufacturing costs thanks to its chiplet design, and relying on an external source like TSMC also helps so that AMD can be fabless. At the International Solid-State Circuits Conference, or ISSCC, there were apparently talks of these savings as reported by the Chinese language website MyDrivers, where AMD illustrated its 7nm CCX-based chips netting anywhere between 25% to 50% savings over hypothetical 7nm monolithic designs that don't exist. AMD states that making its 16-core Ryzen 3950X using a monolithic die would cost twice as much, while its 8-core variants would cost at least 25% more with a monolithic design. Up next, Intel is still promising but not delivering total memory encryption for its CPUs. Intel has been promising full memory encryption with its CPUs as far back as at least May of 2019, nearly a year ago. It was also talked about long before then, but specifically in May is when they were really pushing it for updates. At the recent security day that was hosted, which is a bit ironic given all the vulnerabilities Intel is currently plagued with, Intel wanted to remind everyone that it still has plans for full memory encryption. That was on, well, it'll happen at some point. They haven't really given, we'll see when it happens. But Intel's TME, or total memory encryption, or MKTME, multi-key total memory encryption, got something of a fleeting mention at the event, and nothing more special said about where it rests on Intel's roadmap. Intel's TME and MKTME are equal parts about bringing parity with AMD's SME, or secure memory encryption, and addressing weaknesses and limitations in Intel's SGX enclaves that we've talked about the last few weeks. Intel's full memory encryption would work in a similar fashion to AMD's SME. TME or MKTME would be able to fully encrypt memory, whether it be at rest or in transit. Single ephemeral keys would be generated at the kernel level, with a new 128-bit key generated with every reboot. MKTME is an extension of TME that would add support for multiple keys to be in use. While full memory encryption isn't an answer to side channel or speculative execution attacks, it's an important first step. It also does have inherent mitigations for certain types of data leaks. It'll also be important as non-volatile memory sees more use, and if non-volatile memory ever replaces RAM. Finally, the game Plague Inc. has probably gotten more marketing than it ever could have dreamed of in the last couple of months. And it was also pulled from the China Apple App Store. So Plague Inc., or a plague simulator game where your goal is to build various ailments that kill people and try to wipe out the planet, that one has been reportedly yanked due to, quote, illegal content, according to the developers who made the game when it was pulled from the China Apple App Store. The game has apparently surged in popularity following the outbreak of a certain virus that we won't name here, but it starts with a C and rhymes with demonetized. And that's a good line by Eric. Not really, but thanks to YouTube, we've resorted to just calling it what one of our commenters did, human malware. Anyway, moving on. Quote, we have some very sad news to share with our China-based players. We've just been informed that Plague Inc. includes, quote, content that is illegal in China as determined by the Cyberspace Administration of China. And the quote continues from the developers of the software, it has been removed from the China App Store. The situation is completely out of our control, says Endemic, the developer of Plague Inc. Endemic notes that its removal may have been prompted over concerns and sensitivities regarding the current situation over there. However, it's worth mentioning that, at present anyway, confusingly, the ban only seems to affect the iOS version of the game. And it can still be had in China via Steam for PC if you want to pick that up before it's gone. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. You can subscribe for more or go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus to get behind the scenes videos. As a reminder, we're going to be in Taiwan for a couple of weeks doing factory tours, so you'll want to check those out as well as soon as they go up. And we'll see you all next time.